Welcome to the Super Fantastic Exchange, where we have an inspired conversation with inspiring leaders. And today I've got somebody that I became an instant fan of when I saw her, when I got to host her on Multifamily Insiders Webinars Wednesday. She gave an incredible presentation from Road to Resolution. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, make sure you go check out Multifamily Insiders. Go watch her presentation. It is absolutely incredible. So guys, y'all give it up because I'm a fan of none other than Lori Snider.
Oh, hello. Thank you. I am live from my home office today because we have 2 feet of snow in Denver. So, yeah, that's fun.
That's incredible. And you actually talked to me. You almost shared with me that you were going to do this from an igloo because you had so much snow.
I was. We have 2 feet, yep, at least, outside. And the good news is it will probably all melt and become mud very quickly. And then we're going to repeat the whole process again on Sunday. So we're very excited here in Denver. The weather changes quite often. It keeps it interesting.
Right. And you're never bored because you're always kind of like figuring out what's about to happen.
Never.
That's exciting. Lori, I want to give you a chance to share a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'm Lori Snider. I head up learning and experience at a company called Red Peak here in Colorado. We're a local company. I started in this business long time ago, and I started in leasing, and I was that leasing professional that never wanted to be a manager. And I moved into training and marketing, and I started my own design firm at one point, graphic design. We did lots of logos and, branding for people. And then I had my own company for 15 years called the Lori Snider Company. So, and I was a platform presenter, and I still am, and I go all over, and I love to just share information.
That's awesome. And you did such an incredible job. I was so excited that I got to experience one of your presentations, almost a front row seat. And that's what made me such an instant fan of yours, and how incredible of a thought leader and presenter you are. When you combine those two things, that's an incredible gift and talent to have. So I was glad to have a front row seat. So Lori, I love to connect with inspiring leaders like you, take a peek behind the curtain and find out what inspires these inspiring leaders. And you came back with 3 incredible points, and I can't wait to jump into these. So the first one, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to say the word spark. A spark inspires you. So you got to unpack this one for us. What does this mean, and why does that inspire you?
So when you ask me that question, right, like what inspires you? At first I thought, oh, easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? I'm like, this is not going to be a big deal. And then I started really thinking about it, and I was like, what inspires me? What really inspires me, right? And, I talked to my husband a little bit, and I asked people what inspires me. And they were like, a lot of things, Laura, a lot of things inspire you. But, as I thought more about it, I thought, where I'm really inspired is when I can get in front of an audience and I do my thing. And I was not your typical leasing professional, right? I didn't follow the rules, but I leased a lot of apartments. And when I get in front of an audience of, whether it's 20 or 2,000 people, and I start talking and I start sharing my realness, right? And I start talking about how important sales was. And I start telling that story that I was the leasing professional that was offered management positions. And I said no. And it hurt my career a little bit because I didn't want to manage that was no fun to me, right? Like I liked wooing people. I didn't want to be the one to tell them no, right? And so I literally, I said no. And I trusted enough in myself that I could go a different direction. And I did. And when I tell that story, I inevitably see people in that audience. I see my salespeople, right? Who are like, where's my path? Where's my path, right? Because for years, we've always said, oh, leasing, you just start there. You just start in leasing. Maybe you'll go somewhere, maybe you won't, right? It's like, what is that all about? We need to be providing paths for our good leasing people, right? So that they can make the kind of money that they deserve, that a good salesperson could make in outside sales, in any other place, right? and let them do their thing. Because if we can find ways to expand their roles, right, and give them more responsibility or bigger communities or whatever that looks like to them, we'll keep them. And good salespeople will generate a return. Right? They generate that return. And so when I see that spark in the audience where it's like, you're talking to me, you are so talking to me, right? That inspires me. Or when I start talking about getting real, like really, like this is really what's happening, right? And I see people rolling and they're like, yes, amen, amen, right? That's the spark I see, right? That I'm like, I love connecting and helping people see the realness of it and what's right about it. Right. And so that's kind of why I came up with Spark, honestly, because I love seeing that spark with people. When I watch people stretch and grow, like this post-COVID time, I think, and all this change in the industry, I'm watching people, they're afraid at first, right? And they're unsure. And then you watch them kind of dive in and you watch them grow. And when they start saying, this has been good for me to do, you know that you just prepared them for their future, right? And that they're going to be better because of it. Sometimes it's hard, but it helps so much. So that's kind
Oh
of
my
what.
gosh. I love that. You put a little spark in me. And there were two words, Lori, that really resonated with me. The first, well, I say a word and a phrase. You broke the rules. That was the first thing that you kind of clicked. Because a lot of us, to your point, we start in the industry as a lease consultant, and then we go how the rules tell us to go. This is our steps. But you said no, and you broke those rules because you recognized there was opportunity and you could do something different. You didn't go the normal path, if you will. You went not normal, which is amazing.
Yeah. And, I mean, honestly, when people say, how did you get into this? How did you really get into like marketing and training back in the day? I literally wrote up a proposal. I was a leasing professional and I said, I think you need a trainer in this company. I work for Lincoln Property Company. This is the truth. And I wrote a proposal. I'm sure my manager was laughing. I had to put it in an envelope and mail it. This is the truth. And I mailed it to our vice president, who was Pat Burnett at that time. I'll never forget. And he invited me up to his office, the big corporate offices at Lincoln, Denver, right? I'd never been off site. And so I felt like, remember that show, Mary Tyler Moore, where she's like, you're gonna make it. Right. And so I'm in the elevator, like, and I get up there and I literally sat down and I said, this is why you need training. And I think you can make more money if you train people how to sell things, right? And this is why I should be that person. And then he said, okay, I don't want to see you much in this office. And I said, okay. And that's what I did. So it's like that initiative that people sometimes are so afraid to take. But it's like, what would it hurt if he had said no? He just would have said no.
Yeah.
Right.
But I love it. You raised your hand to say, hey, I have this idea, so I'm going to raise my hand. And you did something not normal.
Right. Right. So, that I think I didn't follow the. I didn't wait for somebody to come find me and tell me, here's the perfect job for you. Right. They kept offering me. I remember driving up to these communities and looking at my husband and going, just don't think I want to do this, because I knew I would be like pigeonholed into that arena, and I was like, I could do it, but I don't think it's what I really want to do, and I think it's important that we stop thinking so much in terms of this is where you need to go next. If you want to be successful in this industry, right? You start in leasing and then you go on to an assistant manager role. Well, that's about the dumbest thing you can think of, right? Like, really? Now let's make you a bookkeeper and stick you
in an office.
And when you come out all dusty and then maybe we'll let you manage something. I mean, what? Teach everybody everything,
Yeah. I love it. And the second word you talked about was connect. That word, I believe, is something that we miss a lot of times when we start sharing. And I think that is such an important component. When you can connect with people, that's when you can get across what you're trying to share. And I love that that spark comes from that connection.
For sure. And when
you create.
Sales, it's all about connection, right? Like just Connect with people. It doesn't matter if you're doing everything you're taught to do. If you connect with them, today people just want help. And I think the other thing that we forget is that people don't know what they don't know. They don't know what they don't know, right? We make all these assumptions about how they're supposed to behave when looking for an apartment. And they don't know what they don't know. You know, I haven't lived, I mean, I'm in the business, so I'd probably know, but I haven't lived in an apartment in probably 20 years, right? So if I'm out today looking, why am I chastised for not knowing what I'm doing?
Yeah.
You know?
So good. So good. Laura, you also, the second point I want to get into, I could talk about this first point for hours with you. The second point you talked about is smart, successful women in property management. That inspires you. So I'd love for you to share what does that mean to you, and why does that inspire you?
Well, I mean, to think about, you know, in my lifetime, when I got into this business, the highest level that any woman had was a regional manager.
Mm.
And they were the tough, I don't know, I don't really have a word to describe the ones that I had. They were fabulous, right? But they were tough. And you know, they had worked really hard to get where they were. And that was about as high as they were going, you know, and you know, in an industry that has been so good to women, that appeals to women in a lot of ways, and who really, I'm guessing, would be dominated by women if you really added it all up, right? There are still way too many. I shouldn't say there are way too many men. There aren't enough women representing in the highest levels of executive function. And, you know, when I see a woman who gets there, I know how we've all worked to help that person be there, and how, you know, I just want to see us go there, right? Because I want little girls today to know that's what they can do. You know, when I got into this business, I didn't even know it existed. This business, you know what I mean? Like, what?
Right.
And when I got into this business, you know, there was no pretense in my mind that I could go to the top. That was nothing that ever occurred to me, because there were no women there. You know? And so I think we have to really think about how we can take women and help them, and really understand bias that is still presented to women today, and work to combat that. And you know, I've known so many great women, and it makes me so excited. You know, one of my favorite people, Faith Aids here at Red Peak, she was promoted into our first C-suite position that a woman held, and it just warms my heart, right? Like, it makes me so happy, but I also know that we're going to be so much better for it. And you know, so that it just, I'm thrilled when I see women succeed, and I just hope we keep it going, and that we create more equity in executive leadership function.
And I think that's so valuable. As a father of two daughters, I want my daughters to know that they can do, and not to allow self-imposed limitations or perceived limitations prevent them from pursuing the things that they want to pursue. So I think those examples, those trailblazers, are valuable. And then that, like you said, it creates equity across the board. When that, you know, when you have those trailblazers doing those things, then my daughters now, and all the daughters out there, can look and say, hey, these perceived limitations are not really there. We just continue to work and we can do it.
Yeah, and there's a lot to do. I mean, job descriptions, you know, there's stats on women, and you know how women won't apply for a job unless they believe they're 100% qualified. And men, on average, will apply when they're 50%.
Wow.
So you know, there's a lot of work to do, you know, but in the way that we approach the job function, in the way that we approach our expectations, qualifications, etc. And but it's exciting, because we're seeing it now, right? We're seeing it happen, and I love it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So the third thing, Lori, that inspires you, which you're speaking my language as well, is being a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
And I love that. You and I earlier were talking about books before we started, but what does it mean for you, and why does being a lifelong learner inspire you?
Well, I've always been a bookworm my whole life, right? I love to read. They didn't know what to do with me in the 8th grade because I had read all the books, so they sent me to the gym, whatever. Because I'm serious, like I've always loved to read. And I think imagine if you couldn't,
Mhm.
right? Imagine if you didn't have the resources you have to be able to discover and to learn and to grow and see what's coming next, right? That is the best part. I mean, in some ways, I feel like I'm just getting started, Gary, right? Because there's so many possibilities. And if you open yourself to it and you start really exploring the world through books, through knowledge, through podcasts, through whatever it is, right? And take a little bit of time every day to invest in you, you're going to go places, man. You're going to go places. When I hear the thing, I didn't have time, that's your own self-imposed limitation.
Ooh.
You have time. You have time. You're not choosing. Just like when
Mhm.
I get my ears black and I don't write. I'm sure you've had this too, where it's like, I just really going to do that today, and right, because I'm
Yeah.
gonna whatever it's going to be, right? But when you have, but that's your choice. That's your choice. And I know that one of my favorite, if I ever get a tattoo, it which I keep talking about, my husband's like, are you just gonna get that darn tattoo or not? So it's gonna say, are you ready for this? It's best, you're gonna want this. So it's gonna say Encaro Imparo. And that means, okay, so it was inscribed on a work of art that Michelangelo did when he was 87 years old. And it means still I learn. Still I learn. And, to me, I mean, learning is everything. If I couldn't read, if I couldn't explore, if I couldn't do the things that I'm like, how would I function? How would I function? Always be learning, because
Mhm.
if you're, and it can be one little thing, right? Like learn how to knit, whatever you want to do, always be learning, because that's how you grow. That's how you grow, right? I don't know what your
Oh,
thought. I mean, you're an author. You've
you're speaking my language. I am
written
like,
a book.
oh my gosh, I am soaking up all the things that you're saying. And but one thing that you said that I think a lot of us take for granted is, what if we couldn't learn? What if we didn't have this easy access to the books or to the YouTubes or to the podcast or whatever? What if? But here you are being grateful that at at any point I can have access to the world's information.
Right.
Now go get it.
And if you don't like to read, listen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, we never had this back in you had to go to the library and get a book. Like you didn't have Amazon. Like you
Mm-mm.
had to go to the library and get a book, or you had to go to a bookstore and buy it, or you had to, whatever it was. Today, if you tell me the name of a book you like, I'll have it downloaded onto Audible or from Kindle in 4 minutes. Right. So the access is there. It's fine. It's making it a priority to invest in yourself. Because when you start learning, you start thinking. And when you start thinking, you start growing. You know?
Oof. Make it a priority to invest in yourself. Oh my gosh, Lori.
First,
Yeah,
you know,
this again, I believe if we work on curating the best version of ourselves, then think about the things that we can do for other
right.
people, or for the circumstance, for the environment around us, when we are our best version. Lori, I could talk to you for hours.
I
It's so
know.
incredible. You're speaking my language. I love it. Everything you're saying is resonating with me. But we're at the end of our time. And before we wrap up, I'd love to give you a chance to share a closing thought with us.
I think just being on this podcast and seeing your discipline and dedication in look at the books you've written. See, I admire that, because my aspiration is to write, right? And I still haven't found my voice there. I know I have it, but I haven't done it yet. And so, to me, that's so inspirational. But I think find your inspiration. And once you find your inspiration, don't veer from that because someone tells you you should. Follow your heart and do what your heart is calling you to do. I see so many people either taking a job for money or doing things that, now money's important, but like doing things not for the reason that is right here, right? This is my purpose. This is what I should be doing. This is where I can best serve. And I think if we do more of that, we'll always be learning, we'll always be growing, we'll all get tattoos that say Encaro Imparo, and life will be fabulous.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome. So find your inspiration, find that purpose, so that you can serve others.
Yeah.
Lori, so good. And when you do get the tattoo, make sure you let us know. That way we'll have you back on
a live podcast from the
we'll do a live stream of your podcast. And when you write your book, you come back on and we'll talk about your book. I'm so excited for you. There you go. There you go. Keep going. Lori, thank you so much for joining us today on the Super Fantastic Exchange. It's been such an honor to connect with you. I'm a fan of yours, and now we just had this conversation, and now I'm a bigger fan of yours. So thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in on the Super Fantastic Exchange. Y'all keep inspiring other people, create your Super Fantastic, and we will see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.